This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. The past few weeks, we have been witness to a frenzy of legislation which strips away women's rights to choose for themselves about what is among their most intimate and personal healthcare decisions, about whether to terminate a pregnancy. This conservative encroachment on women's privacy and assault on their rights, freedoms, and liberty is not an accident, though. In fact, a legal analyst for CNN, Jeffrey Toobin, has been warning for almost a year or more that this wave of anti-choice garbage was coming. And it all centers around Donald Trump's appointing dangerous radicals to the Supreme Court. Watch Toobin talking about it back in June of last year.
I think sometimes we talk about Supreme Court too much in abstractions about dignity and who's qualified and who's not qualified. Let's talk facts. Let's talk about what America is going to be like that's different. You are going to see 20 states pass laws banning abortion outright, just banning abortion, and because they know that there are now going to be 5 votes on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. And abortion will be illegal in a significant part of the United States in 18 months. There is just no doubt about that. And that's why these seats matter so much. Because one of my favorite lines about the Supreme Court was by Justice Robert Jackson, who served on the court in the 1940s and 50s. And he said, "We are not final because we are infallible. We are infallible because we are final." Somebody has the last word, and here it's the Supreme Court, and right. Roe v. Wade is doomed. It is gone because Donald Trump won the election, and because he's going to have the chance, and because he's going to have the chance to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices.
Wow. I'm just still sitting with the gravity of what you just said. How quickly do you think that those changes will come on the state level?
Yeah, first of all, I don't agree with Jeffrey that there are going to be not 20 states. There will be some states, but they'll be in a very distinct minority. You will see this now as an open political debate. People have run for governor. I've run for governor in my state. And while I didn't do this, lots of people have. When this question has come up, they say, oh, that's a federal issue. Well, all overturning Roe v. Wade does is, as Jeffrey points out, it returns it to the states. So then it suddenly becomes a state issue in 50 states, and it's a part of every state election, and it becomes actually more important in those state races than it is today, and that's if it happens. I don't see the 18-month time schedule of Jeffrey Toobin happening, but it is possible sometime in the foreseeable future.
And 4 or so months later, once party boy Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed to his seat on the United States Supreme Court, Toobin continued to read the tea leaves and doubled down on his prediction of the terrible things that were to come and which have in fact been set into motion.
Where do you see the Supreme Court moving now that Judge Kavanaugh looks like he's going to be a member of that of that very elite 9?
Roe v. Wade overturned. Affirmative
let me just hold you for
over.
a second. When you say overturned or more restricted abortion rights for women?
Overturned. What you're going to see is states ban abortion. I mean, Mississippi has talked about it. South Dakota has talked about it. A lot of people say, oh, they're going to limit it, but they're not going to eliminate Roe v. Wade. If you have a state that outlaws abortion, as we are almost certainly going to do in the next couple of years, even probably sooner, the court is going to have to either uphold Roe v. Wade or overturn Roe v. Wade. There is no way to decide that case without deciding the fate of Roe v. Wade. It is going to be overturned. It will be gone. There will be states in this country, probably a dozen or so, maybe more, where abortion is illegal. It will not change California. It will not change New York. Many states will still have abortion as available as it is today. But abortion will be illegal in a significant part of this country because of what happened.
And when he told Susan Collins, among others, he believes in precedent, Roe v. Wade is a precedent, you say?
That precedents get overturned all the time at the Supreme Court. They overturned a Supreme Court precedent which almost identically within 2 years of Roe v. Wade, just this past turn in a case about labor unions. I mean, the idea, and liberals overturned precedents too. I mean, the idea, Lawrence v. Texas was the case that said gay people couldn't be criminally prosecuted for having consensual sex. That was a decision in 2003. That overturned a decision from 1986. It wasn't that long earlier. They overturned precedents with regularity. Not all the time, but with regularity. And President Trump promised during the campaign that he would appoint justices who would overturn Roe v. Wade. And by that, I think he meant he will appoint justices who will overturn Roe v. Wade. And that's what I think he's done.
Look, as right as Jeffrey Toobin obviously was about the healthcare horror that we're all watching come to pass, you didn't really need to be a Harvard-educated legal expert to have made this call. You see, the reason Republican creepers in Georgia, Ohio, Kentucky, and Mississippi have rushed to pass draconian anti-abortion legislation, which bans the medical procedure after 6 weeks, and the reason these Republican rubes in Alabama have passed an outright ban on abortions, even in a case where a child gets pregnant after having been raped by her father. The reason they feel emboldened to do this is because they've heard the words of Donald Trump. They know what they'll be able to get away with in this new Trump-Republican political landscape. They've always been about dragging women back to the time of darkness and oppression, and now they've found their moment in history to act on that desire. And while this disgustingly regressive Alabama bill doesn't aim punishments at women who seek abortion, it's only a matter of time. After all, let's not forget it was Donald Trump who said there has to be some sort of punishment for a woman, sometimes in the most desperate moments of their life, who gets an abortion.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't know. That I don't know.
Well, why not?
Know. I don't know.
And if you're skeptical of the long con here on the part of the Republican Party to have this Kavanaugh Supreme Court overturn Roe versus Wade, Donald Trump said those very words back in 2016 during the presidential debate.
Right. Mr. Trump, you're pro-life, but I want to ask you specifically, do you want the court, including the justices that you will name, to overturn Roe v. Wade, which includes, in fact, states a woman's right to abortion?
Well, if that would happen, because I am pro-life and I will be appointing pro-life judges, I would think that that will go back to the individual states.
But I'm asking you specifically, would you like to...
If they overturned it, it'll go back to the states.
But what I'm asking you, sir, is do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court. I will say this, it will go back to the states, and the states will then make a determination.
And following this motivation to disregard Supreme Court precedent and overturn the law, state legislators in several other states have introduced similar oppressive bills to drag women's health care back to the 1950s. Missouri Republicans have passed a bill getting them one step closer to banning abortion after what they're calling a heartbeat is detected. Along with Missouri, there are 10 other states where Trump Republicans are trying to violate millions of women's health care rights. As Florida, Louisiana, Illinois, New York, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia's Republican bills are working their ways through the state legislative systems. Luckily, there are enough sane and decent people working in politics to have thwarted the efforts in Texas and Maryland and Minnesota. But make no mistake, the objective is to have Donald Trump's Kavanaugh Supreme Court overturn Roe versus Wade. Jeffrey Toobin saw the writing on the wall many months ago. Their strategy isn't a secret. These garbage humans are so sinister that they're ready to force to have a baby, a child who gets pregnant after having suffered a brutal rape. This is what they want, and this is what they have wanted all along. Also, This is yet another example of elections having dire consequences. This should disgust you. This should outrage you. This should drive you to the polls in November to vote a straight anti-Republican Party ticket. Do it for the sake of your country. But moreover, do it for the sakes of the millions of women whose rights are being trampled on by these unapologetic misogynists.